Thursday Night Football, Dolphins Bengals. Should be a fun one between two AFC teams that have had very interesting seasons, crazy ass seasons to say the least. So, let's just get right into it. So, Dolphins offense, right? Now, this Dolphins offense has been really curious to say the least to go through this year. They've had long stretches of games where they have been absolutely horrible, combined with some very late, very explosive stretches, obviously mostly the Ravens game, that have led to their scores looking different than maybe their yardage totals and or eye tests would suggest. And why is that, right? Because it's important to note how that happens. And really the answer is Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have been absolutely incredible this year. They've been killing teams. And importantly, in conjunction with those two guys being so good, they have played a series of secondaries who have gone through horrible injury luck and frankly have been really beating up on blown coverages. That's what they've been doing this year. In that Ravens comeback, the end of that game, even a lot of the Bills game, Bills missing both starting safeties, one of their rookie starting corners of two went out at the very beginning of the game, and that's what Tua was doing. Now, I'm not going to talk too poorly about that, right? Because if you have blown coverages, obviously, a good quarterback's going to beat those. But when they haven't been given these golden opportunities on platters, it's been a huge struggle the vast majority of the time, and it's been really dependent, like I said, on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle doing a whole lot with a whole little. This Bengals defense, on the other hand, has played really, really, really well this year. They've been hurt by their offense just kind of being bad and turning the ball over more than you would definitely hope for. But they still are reminiscent in a lot of ways of the team that took them to the Super Bowl last year. So how does the matchup look in this game, right? Well, for this Dolphins team, I'm actually pretty worried about this one. Tua can play fine into disciplined zone matchups as far as getting the ball out of his hands fairly quickly into not always the worst situations. But let's be clear, he's still bad. His stat line, obviously, in that Ravens game looked incredible, and he did just, beat the Bills. That was almost thoroughly because of their defense and because, again, I mentioned the strength of their wide receivers. And that Ravens thing, I don't want to harp on it too much, but let me be clear that Tua was just chucking the ball deep, and it happened to go well. So, yeah, he's not the worst quarterback in the league or anything like I'm saying that, but he still actively hurts their offense. And those long stretches where they're going through struggles is because of him mostly. Now, their offensive line is a culprit too, especially the interior. Robert Hundley and Meikenberg have been not very good this year. Greg Little at the right tackle. While he's been better than I think I was necessarily expecting stepping in as a starter, I still have really big worries about him, especially into better players. So, in this matchup, I get really worried about it. While Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are still going to do the things that they do, and they give your floor, a potential floor to your offense that exists very little or doesn't really exist outside of this team necessarily, because not very many other teams have two great receivers like that. The ceiling is really not there either because the consistency is so bad with Tua. And in this matchup specifically, why I keep harping on this is that this Bengals defense plays really, really consistent, solid, disciplined football with talented secondary players and a real pass rush. Now, nobody on this defense is particularly elite. But in this game and into Tua, I don't know if you could ask for a better defensive matchup, to be honest with you, because they're going to generate rush. Trey Hendrickson, especially, is probably going to beat up on Greg Little quite a bit. He can even beat Teron Armstead, too. Cam Sample, Joseph Asai, and Sam Hubbard, while none of them are particularly notable, are all good enough, at least this year, to create rush. And on the interior, the Dolphins are just kind of bad enough, especially if DJ Reader is playing, that there's real rush there too. So you have this environment that's not a comfortable pocket at all. And while, Eli Apple and Shoba Awuzie are not going to shut down Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle by any means, they are not going to get beat deep very often. They're not going to blow coverages the way that you've seen the Bills and the Ravens do previously. And that hurts because then you're asking Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill to do so much to carry this offense when they have to catch the ball within, 5-10 yards instead of already 40 yards down the field. Now, they're still capable of it for sure, but then you get into how good Von Bell and Jesse Bates are on the back end, especially at limiting stuff like that. Plus, Mike Hilton is a slot corner. It just gets really tough. So I don't see a lot of success for this Dolphins offense really at all in this one. Maybe they break some crazy explosive plays. It's possible. But with the rush environment, like I said, and with how I kind of expect Tua to struggle to really push the ball down the field at all in this game and settle for a lot of short stuff that the Bengals are going to be able to recover to. I just don't see it. And the Dolphins are very unlikely to be able to run the ball in this game either. Their offensive line has been really bad in that department in this year, and that's where the interior being so weak, I think he shows up even more. Liam Eichenberg just can't really push anybody save his life. These Bengals guys on the interior, even if DJ Reader doesn't play, he's going through some injury stuff right now, are still good enough to succeed. And their edge guys just have such an advantage in the run game. Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard especially, that it's hard to see them being able to run the ball. So I had them at 13 to 20 points. And frankly, that's even higher than I would want to go, but I expect their defense to still create maybe some turnover, short fields, that type of stuff. But it's a tough one for Tua here. So the other side of this, right? How does it look for the Bengals? Well, this Bengals offense has also struggled pretty mightily through a lot of the stretches of this year. And a lot of that is similarly due to a really bad offensive line, some bad offensive coaching, and a quarterback who can struggle if he's not handed everything on a silver platter a lot of times. Now, he has more experience dealing with the bad offensive line than Tua does, or is better at it than Tua is, but his offensive line is also probably worse. So how does it look? This Dolphins defense, too, I should mention, they've been incredible this year. Their way of doing things, though, is really unique, and frankly, they're playing with fire every time they do it, right? No team and only no safety help, no any safety blanket looks as this team does. No team actually lines up this many players in the line of scrimmage and then proceeds to actually blitz all of them like this team does. They do a lot of crazy things, and I like it a lot of the times. But in certain matchups, which we'll explore here, I think you can get into real trouble because if things don't go their way very quickly, then things can actually get out of hand very quickly, like we saw for the vast majority of the Ravens game. And that is something I'm definitely worried about here. So how does it look in this one specifically, right? Well, my point here, basically, and why I think the Bengals are actually going to have success in this game offensively, is that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are still really, really, really good. And I don't expect the Dolphins to necessarily change up what they've been doing defensively, which means you're going to have Xavier Howard and Kadero Kohu or Keon Crossan, whoever it is, Nick Needham, on islands against those guys, and I should, of course, mention Tyler Boyd here, too. While I think all of those Dolphins secondary players are various levels of very, very good to good. Xavier Howard, a huge fan of. Nick Needham, I actually been a huge fan of for a long time. I think he's a really good player. And even Kadero Kohu, who's been one of the better rookie corners in the league this year. None of those guys, especially over the course of the game, are good enough, even Xavier Howard, to actually shut down Jamar Chase. Especially, but even T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And when you get into that with the way the Dolphins are playing, when they lose really, really hard. We saw stuff like that with the really long Rashad Bateman touchdown against the Ravens. There was times in that Bills game, there was actually a lot of times where Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, mostly Stephon Diggs in that one, they were running open. They were really getting out and having space around them. They were just making up for it in other ways with the way that they rushed the passer. And frankly, Josh Allen played horrible in that game. Now, that is contributed to by this Dolphins defense, and I actually expect that to kind of be the case with Joe Burrow as well. But what can be a little different in those two guys is that Joe Burrow, I think, is even more willing to just kind of say, fuck it, and throw the ball really quick when he takes a snap, even if he's wrong. Josh Allen has a little bit more of a tendency to try to create something off the snap and then throw the ball way downfield. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, he still throws the ball down the field a lot and says fuck it a lot. But Joe Burrow will do it instantly, especially with his connection with Jamar Chase. So, well, yeah, maybe Xavier Howard shadows him. Maybe Xavier Howard does a really good job. I don't think it's enough because of just how good Jamar Chase is. And with Higgins on the other side, you just run into issues. So I think that there are real explosive plays to be had here. And like I mentioned, let's be clear, this Dolphins defense, for as good as the statistics have been, outside of the Ravens game, there are absolutely holes here. There are guys getting beat in man coverage. There are guys running free, and they depend so much on this defensive line and defensive scheme to rush the passer really, really quickly. That will still happen in this game. I have no doubt about that, right? They have individual winners all over. This Bengals offensive line, not very good. La'el Collins has been incredibly disappointing to me as a former really, really good tackle, has been just awful. Cordell Volson has not been a very good rookie. Alex Kappa is showing why I don't like him, and he's not a good player. And Jonah Williams is that he is. With all that being said, though, like I mentioned, with how quick Joe Burrow is willing to get the ball out of his hands, and with Zach Taylor, despite his huge shortcomings as an offensive coach, at least showing the willingness to throw a lot of screens and a lot of junk pretty quick off the snap. In this one, I think that can exploit the areas in this Dolphins defense that do get hurt. And all it takes is a couple different plays, and that Bills offense scores a lot of points here. Same thing with this Bengals. They're not as good, but you get into similar situations with still really, really good receivers. So I actually like the Bengals offense to succeed in this one, 24 to 32 points. Again, I think that is helped by their defense probably causing some turnovers, some short fields, having a lot of possession. But I like the Bengals a whole lot in this game. I think that their offense just works schematically better into the Dolphins defense here than we've seen so far this season. And the Dolphins, I just expect Tua to really, really struggle. And that's not even to mention that he's hurt. He might not even play. If it's Bridgewater, you kind of run into all the same issues, but to a much more pronounced extent. So betting-wise, yeah, 4 is a little heavy of a line. I would say I'm a little surprised that it's that high, but I do get it for sure. But I still like it a lot anyway. I think the Bengals just are in a strong position to win this game the way they match up with the given personnel in these teams. Over under, 47 that's a really good number. That sounds about right. I would lightly lean the over because I think the Bengals can be kind of close to there. And again, both these quarterbacks, if they both throw a pick six in this game, I wouldn't be shocked, which helps the over under obviously tremendously. As far as my betting record on them, I feel good about the Dolphins for sure. Maybe that Ravens one was a little lucky, but I think that was kind of my whole point going into that game was just the injuries that the Ravens had in the secondary, which really, really ended up popping out as that game went through. And with the Bengals, mostly stay away. I just still, of all the quarterbacks that I'm unsure of what makes them good and or bad in the league, I think Joe Burrow's at the top of that list still for me, and that's something that I gotta watch more of. But at this point, I'm still good with, especially how I feel about their defense. So I do like the Bengals in this one.